Do you bribe your kids?
All the time.
What kind of research are you working on?
Well, one thing we just finished this project where we were incentivizing kids to eat their vegetables. And I think the reason I'm really excited about this project is there's this almost visceral reaction on the part of parents that bribery is evil. And I'm okay with that. But at the same time, I feel like incentives are such a powerful tool to change behavior. All of us respond to incentives in our work life. Um, and so if there's some behavior we'd like to inculcate in children, I actually think incentives should definitely be part of the toolkit. And what was interesting, there was a recent TED Talk where the speaker was talking about how bad incentives are, and then he asked the audience to raise their hands if they thought it would be appropriate for a school to accept a grant in order to provide incentives, and most of the audience said no. And so I feel actually we're a little misguided in how we think about incentives. I think there's definitely places in time when they can be very powerful, and they can change kids' preferences, they can help kids acquire skills so that you can put them on a better path and not need incentives in the future. The paper we just recently published shows that even small incentives like a nickel or a quarter can dramatically change the fraction of kids eating fruits and vegetables at lunch. And with some of our recent work right now, we're actually putting those incentives in place for up to 5 weeks. And what we find is that having incentives in place for 3 or 5 weeks makes it so kids are even more likely to eat fruits and vegetables after the incentives are done.
Do you bribe your kids?
All the time. Yeah, so the most notable example is I was coaching my son's baseball team, and he wasn't doing particularly well at it. It was coach pitch, so you don't strike out. You just keep swinging until you hit it. And so if you're not very good at hitting it, it could be a while, and the other kids get a little disgruntled. And so I actually paid my son $1 if he would hit the ball 100 times. So we went to a park. And what was interesting about this is during the beginning, he'd maybe be like 5 pitches per hit. But then later he got actually better at it. So that's a case where my dollar was able to help him acquire a skill so that he could enjoy the activity more in the future.
Of your past research, what are you proudest of?
There's lots of stuff that I find really interesting, but I think probably that the thing I'm most proud of are 2 papers. One's about racial bias in the MBA. Now the reason I'm really proud of that paper is I think what it did is it highlighted that racial bias can occur even in settings where there's lots of monitoring, there's no kind of institutional forms of racism, there's no explicit racism, but still the kind of implicit prejudice that we hold in our heart can change the way we behave, even in a very transparent setting. And so what that means is if people are willing to exhibit some racial bias in an arena full of people watching their decision, then it's like hard to imagine that it's not occurring in less transparent situations, like in a courtroom or when a police officer is interacting with a suspect, or even a teacher with his students. So actually, I'm really kind of proud of that paper as a way of documenting that racial bias still influences us today. And then the other paper was actually one of my first papers, was about birth order differences and how much time parents spend with their children. And the reason I like that paper is it's actually changed the way I think about my own parenting. So the paper just shows that parents spend about the same amount of time with their kids on any given day, but as their kids get older, they spend less time with them. And so as a result, the firstborn child gets about 3,000 more hours than the secondborn child. And so just as a parent, I've tried to overcome that tendency to, I have to always remind myself, okay, what was I doing with my firstborn that I'm not doing with my third or fourthborn?
So economists are infamous for saying voting is irrational.
Yeah.
Do you vote?
That's a great question. I voted a lot, so I've tried to vote. So